All right, well, hello and welcome. And let me just say one thing. Hold on, gotta get closer. All right, let me just say one thing. You saw the title. This is not a reactionary video by any means. Fully disclosed, Dark Horse MVP candidate might be taking it a little far with Sam Howell, but I've been a believer in Sam Howell since day one. In January 2022, I started to do research in the draft, mainly because I'm in a lot of dynasty leagues. I want to make some videos for this channel, and I've been pumping Howell's tires for a very long time. I literally said last year in May that Sam Howell was the logical choice for the Commanders to start at QB over Carson Wentz after they traded for him. Not because I thought Wentz was terrible. I mean, yeah, I thought Wentz was terrible, but my reasoning was why stick with the known commodity of trash? Why not play the rookie and see if there's something there? I wish more teams would do this, but there's way too many jobs at stake for the NFL to be an experimental league, especially on a team like Washington. So then Heineke starts last year, and in Week 18 against Dallas, Howell got a shot, and Dallas had a lot to play for. It was not a meaningless football game whatsoever. And the Commanders were already out by that point, so I'm glad they gave Sam Howell a shot. But let's just dig a little deeper. Why am I so in love with this guy? Why am I so in love with a 5th round pick? And 5th round pick, the hit rate is not good. Like, we don't want to invest in 5th round picks and get super attached to these guys, but more on that. So, if you remember every way too early 2022 mock draft, it had Sam Howell as the top 5 pick. This is for a number of reasons, and if you've watched any Washington in the preseason this year, his accuracy, his pocket navigation, his great rushing ability, emphasis on the word great, it is great rushing ability, trust me. And they were all on display his first 2 years as a starter at UNC. He threw 70-yard bombs to De'Ami Brown, and he made it look easy. And in my opinion, this isn't even hindsight. He had the strongest arm of any quarterback in the 2022 class. There was a lot to like about Sam Howell after his 2020 year at UNC, which was his sophomore season. He fit the mold of a quarterback at the next level who can succeed, and in the modern era, he is very toolsy, and I feel like nobody was talking about him at the time of last year's draft. 2020 UNC was great. I thought Sam Howell was going to be the next big thing. You watch him, he shows every bit of personally what I thought he would be during his 2020 year at UNC when I was watching him this year in Washington. Lots of instinctual playmaking. A lot of these guys coming into the league now are complete wild cards as passers. But guess what? Sam Howell in college made some of the best throws I've ever seen from a college football quarterback. But coming into the 2021 year, he was widely viewed as the best quarterback prospect. Same with Spencer Rattler, and that hype train kind of went nowhere. And Howell's play dropped off big time in 2021. UNC was a total disappointment. Part of this is Howell probably was not good enough to get picked in the top 5 like everybody thought he would, which I won't dispute, even though I loved him. But a large portion of this also falls onto the fact that UNC lost pretty much all their offensive firepower that offseason. Sam Howell walked into training camp at UNC without his 2 best running backs and his 2 best wide receivers from that last year. UNC lost Javonte Williams, De'Ami Brown, Michael Carter, and Daz Newsome to the NFL. And Javonte was the 2nd round pick, and De'Ami was the 3rd round pick. So there were 2 guys who went day 2 of the NFL draft. But Howell was very good in his own right. However, he experienced a steep drop-off in play. Yeah, they had Ty Chandler. Yeah, they had Josh Downs. But it's noticeable when you watch Sam Howell from 2020 to 2021. 2020, Sam Howell's absolutely dealing. In 2021, he showed fearlessness, but he really didn't have the confidence in his ability that he had showed the year before. He also ran a UNC offense that had a grand total of 23 plays in the playbook. It's not an exaggeration, 23 plays in the whole playbook, and 75% of them were RPO focused. Yet through all of this, you could still see why Sam Howell, in my opinion, was easily the best quarterback of that draft. He's also in a very impressive bucket of guys who threw 80 or more touchdown passes throughout their college career who declared early. And there are guys in this bucket like Sam Bradford, Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa, and yeah, I think Roethlisberger too. But yeah, Howell was also praised for his leadership, confidence, and intelligence in interviews. But I really can't think of anything that like made him drop down boards so far. And full disclosure, I can't remember the exact narrative of Sam Howell during that like April 2022 timeframe heading into the draft. It felt like we just kind of glossed over him, and it was I don't know, it was weird, but I do remember being absolutely bewildered that he fell to the fifth round while guys like Corral and Ritter were getting picked up in the third. Zappi in the fourth over Howell also really was bad. And disclaimer, I think Ritter could be good, especially because he has the best run blocking line in the league, along with Bijan, London, and Pitts. I really, really, really was not a fan of his coming out of Cincinnati. There's literally a video on my channel saying Desmond Ritter is bad. Like, that's literally the title. But I liked what I saw from him last year on Atlanta, especially as a hater. But Matt Corral was just a pick down the drain, especially now that they have Bryce Young. Pickett in the first also really confused me. My argument is that not that Corral, Pickett, and Ritter weren't worth their draft spots, but how in the world was Sam Howell drafted after all of them? And I'm not going to say Willis because I still stand behind every Sharps theory about why Malik Willis should have been drafted early for philosophical reasons mainly. But I still had Howell as my QB1 over him, and Howell and Willis are the only ones who I really thought would fit in the NFL as potential franchise quarterbacks. Now, I liked Pickett as a prospect, I just didn't love him, and I don't know what goes on in these teams, like war rooms as they're building their big board, as they're interviewing these guys, as they're doing all their draft prep, because they sit down with all these guys, they talk to them, they pick their brain. But sometimes the NFL gets it wrong. I thought Sam Howell was the best quarterback in this draft, or not this draft, but 2022. And the NFL, they did not agree with me. The NFL, by draft capital, says he is bad. Kodiak says he's good. So where do we go from here? The biggest indicator of NFL success is draft capital. And Tom Brady has shown us that it's not necessarily the holy grail of whether or not a guy is actually good, but it is very telling as to what kind of leash you are going to have as a prospect. And I feel like we as a community are pretty good at evaluating prospects, but I really didn't see as much hype as I thought I would have during the 2022 offseason. There's potentially a chance that, considering he came from the ACC, there may be executives in the league that were not as high on him as the community was. The NFL oftentimes gets it wrong, but investment talks. Did the Carolina Panthers give up a haul to move up from number 9 this past year to number 1 overall because they were lukewarm on Bryce Young? No, it's the investment. And that's the thing about Howell, is that there is no investment. Even quarterbacks who get picked in the second round. For a skill position player, that's pretty good capital. For a quarterback, that's borderline meaningless. You maybe get a year or two if you're lucky, and if you're good, you'll stick. I mean, I was one of the biggest Sam Howell truthers out there, and I only grabbed him in one dynasty league I'm in during summer 2022 because there's still a very, very low floor with guys who are day 3 picks. Oftentimes, they're more likely to get cut rather than they are to crack a 53-man roster, let alone become a huge difference maker. And I don't want to go all in on guys with a low chance of working out, but for a 5th-round pick, this was about as good of a situation as you could have hoped for. His only guys ahead of him were Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke, and being in a QB room with veterans was probably good for him, especially after going against ACC defenses. And man, facing the Syracuse defense to facing the Philadelphia Eagles defense, that's a bit of a step up. That's a bit of a difference, and it's going to take some time to adjust to stuff like that. But for this year, I think it's wheels up for Sam Howell. They have a lot of meh at running back, admittedly. I still think the best athlete in that room is Gibson. But Terry McLaurin, who hurt his toe, prayers up, and Jahan Dotson, that's a pretty solid group of weapons. And Cole Turner also been making the rounds during training camp as well. And I mean this with all due respect. I really don't know how Ron Rivera is not the overwhelming favorite to be the next coach fired. Eric Bieniemy running the offense is something that should excite literally everybody who's a Commanders fan. It excites me as somebody who's big on Sam Howell. We are going to see Howell unleashed. We are not just going to see him throw checkdowns all the time. We are going to see him throw bombs to Terry. We are going to see him throw bombs to Jahan Dotson. And that's the best way to use him. Oh, and guess what? Against ferocious pass rushers, you need a guy who can escape the pocket. And Sam Howell's rushing ability is absolutely incredible. I've seen him fight through contact. I've seen him lower his shoulder this preseason. And while, yeah, that looks cool for actual football, and maybe it's not great for, sake of longevity or durability, it shows that he's a competitor. He wants to compete hard. I hate this phrase, but he's got that dog in him. But yeah, I don't know how Ron Rivera is not the overwhelming favorite to be the next coach fired. He's been the right coach for the Commanders during the transition period of the past few seasons. He's a man of integrity, and I think despite all the other BS going on with Washington, like Dan Snyder, name change, the fact that Washington sounds like it's a horrible team to play for, NFC East. DMV area is also not really the top of most people's destinations about where they would like to live. And the NFLPA report card on this team was absolutely abysmal. But despite all of this going wrong for them, they rarely have distractions from the players themselves. The locker room has seemed very healthy over the past few seasons, and an indicator of your locker room is how hard they play against division rivals during the lost years, and they beat the brakes off of Dallas in Week 18. Were one of two teams during the regular season to beat the Eagles, the only team during the regular season that beat Jalen Hurts. They celebrated like they won the Super Bowl against Baltimore, and I know they were getting clowned, but hey, that's my overarching point. That being said, I would be very shocked if it's mid-January 2024 and Ron Rivera is still coaching this team. If you're a fan of the Commanders, then you're definitely giving your salute to Rivera. But assuming the offense does what I think it can, I don't see why Bieniemy shouldn't be the head coach. Grace is probably going to run out for Rivera with new ownership, and there's a lot of risk in going all in on the Sam Howell hype train. He doesn't play well, they might clean house, and the rest of Washington, if they're playing well and he isn't, they're easily going to go to Brissett to attempt to save their jobs. And that's why he has the low floor. But yeah, I'm all aboard. I doubled down on this guy in January 2022 and May 2022 on my YouTube channel, and this guy's going to make a name for himself this year. He's already getting a lot of hype. Like, there are so many Sam Howell breakdowns on YouTube. I live in Vegas, and I'm going to throw some money on Sam Howell to win MVP in 2023. It's not going to be a lot, maybe $50, because the odds of him actually being like this good to the point where he actually plays at an MVP level are very slim, especially in his first year starting. But I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I ride with my dogs. It's Sam Howell season. Terry McLaurin, Jahan, Dotson, wheels up.